All right. So I think that what we get to see is that, yes, all three are public spaces. There are differences in the way how people perceive. And this is exactly what I wanted to bring about. All three spaces are good in their own ways, and we see and we prefer something over the other. But what as a result of the exercise I'm able to do is to kind of bring into some sort of a consensus that, look, how out of about 106 people, 37% of people think the third one is preferably better than option 2 or option 1. So I'm kind of making an objective and a clear statement that among the lot of people that we all have gathered together, we know that option 3 is a much better space. We might have reasons for it. For example, there are trees, there are more liveliness, there are a lot of kids going around, and we also have a lot of color elements. We have other things that kind of make the space lively versus what you would not have seen in one. But as a result, you're kind of making an objective decision. You're kind of bringing in the element of participation. And that's why all of these designs, when they are subjected to people's perception, kind of make an objective orientation. Okay, all right. So let me get back to the presentation. And like I was mentioning, cities today are taking what we call as an objective-oriented decision towards data design, right? A lot of these information that you have is coming from people. So what I have is a map of New York, and what the city of New York is trying to do is to understand where are people tweeting the most, right? So you have Twitter as the platform, and what cities are trying to do is that they are trying to I'm apologizing for the technical difficulties, but yes, I hope there is no other interruption to come in. So I'm just going to reiterate what I was speaking, because I don't know if that kind of got communicated. So what I have here on the screen is the map of New York, and what New York City Council has tried to do is that it has been able to collate images and opinions of different public spaces that are being put by people on Twitter. Now, what it gives them is it gives them with an intensity that, of course, there's no legend here, but what it tries to tell that, these are the pockets of the yellow spaces are the pockets of spaces where people are trying to get some sort of an information or the other. People are posting something good, are they posting something bad? So you get some sort of an objectified notion. You have an evidence, prima facie, which you kind of use to make big decisions on data or on designs or on the fact that something is not maintained properly. So we are going to a world where we are moving towards a world, and this means something for architects like us, where we are trying to make design decisions that are not anymore flimsy or fancy or not based on theory, but it is based primarily from what people also objectively think that is an issue or stems from an public opinion. And this today has been followed as by different ministries or different global commitments that we have as one of the core ideas. Participatory planning is the foundation for a very good objective-oriented design. And I think as we go further in the years to come, this is going to be a mainstream exercise and not just a concept on which designs are going to get evolved. This is again a snapshot of the New York City Council, where what they are trying to see is to simulate opinions on the feeds that they're getting from people and how are they feeling, or they're trying to interpret. And with the age of artificial intelligence and machine learning trying to kick in, we are trying to move towards a design that will objectively satisfy users. It's not left to anybody's interpretation anymore. It's left to the way how it can holistically picturize what people want together. And as architects, you have a very critical role to play in terms of conceiving this information and using this information to come up with design. There is no doubt that some of the best designs in this world have come primarily because of the intuitive gut in the way how you actually deal with designs. But what such an exercise will help you is to kind of focus on issues that sometimes might not come or not be visible to the naked eye. These are issues which can be also conceived together to make this design as objective as it can and make it in a way which is also, satisfying some of these parameters. Now we know that, okay, all of us want to kind of say a decision that, option 1 as a design of public space is not that as equivalent as option 3. Now we had a set of parameters, right? Now that parameter might be slightly different than what I would have conceived it or what you guys would have conceived it, right? So we don't know, we don't really have a set of parameters that we say that, for me, public spaces, there needs to be about 50 people or so. And that's when I want to call it a public space. For you guys, some of you guys might think that no, at least there should be trees or some sort of an element which is providing a shade as an element or no. Or some of you guys might think that, let's talk about street furniture as a way where people can come and activate their spaces. So for you, that those elements might have been a prima facie the first indicator that you would want to say. Now there are so many differences in the way how we perceive it. So how do we make it objective? How do we make a decision that is not biased? So for example, if I have to take, the city of Bombay might have a lesser amount of green spaces, primarily because of the land acumen that is there, versus a city like Chandigarh or Gandhinagar, where there is abundance in terms of the green spaces. Now, how do you compare Gandhinagar versus Mumbai? Right, they both are cities, they have people in them, and of course there is a city life, and of course there is a lot of activity that revolves around publicness. Now, how do you compare this? Right. So this might be one of those questions that you would also have in mind. Hey, I come from this city, but how is my city going to be compared? How are you guys actually comparing the cities one by one? And this is exactly where there is a wonderful framework called the Sustainable Development Goals. Right? How many of you guys have actually heard about these goals? If you guys can just go about in the chat box, if you guys can just write it, that would be great. Have you guys ever heard about the Sustainable Development Goals? Oh, that's great. I see a lot of yeses coming in through. That's great. That's great. That's actually good to know, because I think then these goals need no introduction. These goals were created in 2015 by about 193 communities came in together as an agenda. They decided that, hey, we have done enough damage. Now we are trying to progress, but we do not know how to document this progress. So before the Sustainable Development Goals, there was the Millennium Development Goals, which were kind of conceived in 2000, and halfway through they realized that they are not able to benchmark, right? So if they wanted to compare the progress of what India is trying to do versus China versus the US, they were not having a common platform, right? And how do you compare it? We have drastic cultural differences, we have a lot of economic differences, and how do you still try to compare? Right, and that is exactly why the Sustainable Development Goals are an amazing blueprint that will kind of help you to document this progress, right? And I think if you go to Google and just mention out the global goals, you'll have a great understanding about each of these goals that try to attempt something about the environment, something about the social characters, and something about the economic characters. And this is a very good reference, and it is being considered as some sort of a precursor to any sort of development that's happening in our cities today. So I would recommend that you guys spend some time to just go over the goals, see what they're trying to do, or what are the targets that they're trying to achieve. So when you mean by no poverty, where are you heading towards? What do you mean by no poverty? And how are you defining poverty? So this is a global benchmark that all countries, all cities, and all stakeholders who had attended the UN convention had made a commitment to actually deliver on these goals. And for the ease of information, India is going to play a very, very critical role for the successful completion of these goals, because we, of course, hold the larger number of population. At the same time, there are different dividends in which we have to work. So yes, there has been a global commitment, and in India, there is this body called Niti Aayog. You can actually go down to the website to just try and look at what they are also trying to do in India to see how our commitments to these global goals are being also reached. Now, for the sake of this particular competition, we are just going to be focusing about one specific goal that's of a common interest, which is goal number 11 that talks about sustainable cities and communities. Now, this particular goal has been envisioned with a clear agenda that our cities are going to be very, very important elements that will shape development in the next future. And all right, so yes, so like I was talking about, I hope I'm not reiterating something that you guys missed out. So SDG 11 is a benchmark goal that serves as a platform for the cities to compare themselves and to see how they are performing with this. So for you guys, this is going to be a very important goal. And even with this, there is a target called 11.7 that talks about provision of access to safe and inclusive green and public spaces. So this is going to be a benchmark platform that will allow you to kind of go back and revisit and see how your city is performing versus some of these global cities or cities in your region, or for that example, even in your smaller precinct or the areas that you guys will be envisioning. It will give you some sort of an idea that how do I map these, or what sort of things am I supposed to look at. That will give me an idea of how to assess these spaces. The other reference points especially in a country like ours, is some of our missions. I'm hoping that some of you guys would have heard this whole word called smart cities, and it's been in the talk for almost 5 years now. And there are subsidiarily other missions very similar to smart cities, and they again talk about something on these accounts. You know, they talk about how a cities actually affect the livelihood and how do you kind of improve the livability in cities. All right. So like I was saying, that this is a very good reference point for you guys to just go back and see that what is your city trying to do with respect to some of these missions that are mentioned, whether it is the smart cities mission, what is the Amrut trying to do, what is the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana trying to do, what is Swachh Bharat mission trying to do. All of these will have some linkage to one or the other in the way how they're trying to improve the public spaces, either with maintenance, or is it about trying to deal with these public spaces, or trying to put new interventions that will enhance the way how these spaces perform. So this is again going to be a good reference point for you guys to just go out and Google and understand that how are your cities also performing. And last but not the least, I'm going to definitely take you to the website where we are. This is the UN Habitat website. So the moment you actually type in this in Google, it will take you to a set of publications. So these, even in this, there are 2 publications that are going to be very, very critically helpful in terms of for you to assess the way how some of these public spaces can be evaluated, objectively evaluated. So these are going to be starting points. I'm not going to take into this, and of course we will be having a series of lectures or series of things to kind of take you through these. But yes, as an open-ended thing, it would be better if you can take up the as a first-hand look into these 2 documents. The first one being citywide public space assessment, which is a technical guide published by UN Habitat. The other one is a public space site-specific assessment, which basically gives you a precursor in terms of understanding how to actually evaluate a public space. What are the methods that are available, and how do you define which public space is better than the other, right? So these are good tools that are actually available for you guys to see and understand how to take this further. And as you go inside the competition, it will be a good reference ground for you to start the fundamental basis of starting and collating data together, right? Darshana, if I'm missing out on something, if you want to elaborate.
No, I'll jump in when required. I think this is going fine. Thanks.
All right, fine. So that's where there I am with the presentation, and it's just to tell you that that before design, a lot of us, when really want to jump into design, we have some sort of an idea, we have a mood board, we have an the picture or an imagery that kind of influences our design, or something, some conversations with people kind of make these decisions. But to make this process even more streamlined, and to make this as holistic as possible, to make this as evaluative, and to remove out the biases, that's where data kicks in. That today, the way how decisions are being taken because of evidences that you can find on sites. And that's what would help you to do this. And the diagram that I put together is just to tell you that the first thing that you would want to try and do with your site is just to have a pre-assessment, to actually look at it. Go on Google Earth, just try to see, oh, this is my site. Okay, so what are the features? Where are my roads coming from? What are my important landmarks? What are the parks that I can see? And these parks, are they, when compared to the city, what does it mean for the city at all in the first place? So these questions will try and give you a narrative that will form one among the very, very critical elements that will help you to push towards design, right? And that's the second part of it, which is to basically gather data. You can gather data is of two different types. One is a qualitative data. This is something that you would generally find people speaking about a space when you talk to some of these city councils or members from the municipal corporation, or anybody who you think is a participant. In fact, the people who use some of these spaces, when you speak to them, they have some bit of adjectives that will try and define what a particular space is, whether it is dingy or what needs to come. Those are critically, those elements will help you to kind of come to a design decision. And that's why data gathering is as important as what people try to say it is. Now, I think with the stages of competition, you would have seen it's structured into two distinctive halves. The first half is basically getting together a base map for your precinct that you have chosen. So I'm given to be informed that, yes, there are about 35 cities or so where we'll have different precincts in the cities which you would be mapping. And this mapping is going to be very, very critical. This mapping is going to be a very big element for your successful translation of design. So my focus on this whole presentation was to just give you a highlight of what are the tools that are going to be there. Of course, there are going to be a set of other sessions where my fellow colleagues will be talking about GIS, they'll be talking about other specific tools which you can use to kind of objectively reach to a particular solution. So yes, I think that part is already there, but still, I just wanted to reiterate and tell you that this is going to be a very, very critical element with respect to this competition, and also gives you an opportunity to network among people, right? Today, this is probably going to be the first steps that all of us as professionals are going to take up in terms of contributing to the larger agenda. This competition doesn't just talk about winning or saying that this is what we have done, this is what we want to contribute. This is something specifically done for yourself. You're going to take this as a medium for discussions with anybody, because this is done with a reference framework of some of our global commitments. It gives you an opportunity to even discuss and bring it out on forums where there is generally not a larger representation of architects, right? When people just conceive architects to be solution providers of looking at a particular building, a way they have to be designed, right? But by this process, you would get to understand what are the other factors that kind of influence your design, and how are you able to innovatively address some of those challenges, whether it is the economic aspect, whether it's the environmental aspect, or whether it's the social aspect. You will be able to kind of ponder upon and start thinking something on these lines. And these competition also gives you an opportunity, and I think once you are divided into groups and you are posted down into let's say different working groups, you will have an opportunity to again go back and connect with people from your own cities in trying to understand, hey, how did this thing actually happen for you? Were you able to kind of map these things together, or is there some sort of an inference that you're getting something for yourself, or even probably collaborate together just to put things together and see, is there a much better intervention that is possible? So there is a lot of flexibility in the way how this competition is being organized, and I believe that you will take up and use this opportunity to kind of benchmark the way how you want to design itself. So that's more or less from me. Darshana, if there is something, if you want to add up, and we can take up the questions after that.
So, Bree, still the questions are being typed. Should we clarify what the next steps are?
Yeah, Darshana, so if you can actually do that, it will be great.
Okay, I'll try and clarify what the next steps are. So the question is obviously on what basis will the groups be divided into. We've looked at all the teams and we've identified that you all are spread across 35 different cities and towns. So we are grouping you all based on the cities and the towns that your colleges are based in. Each city has a range between 1 to up to 14 teams. So within each city, we are dividing up the city into map tiles on GIS. Each team will be given an area of 7.5 kilometers by 7.5 kilometers as a map tile to crowdsource data. Crowdsourcing data will only mean that you have to draw up the open spaces within the patch you're looking at and categorize it based on a predetermined framework that we are going to provide to you. So those will be the next steps. Those groups, we are setting them up as we go. You should see them on World Labs, and you will be able to identify which of your teams, even for different colleges, belong in individual groups. By Monday, each of the teams will be given individual GIS files. So you can look at which patch of the city you will need to crowdsource data for. So all of that will be clarified for you all, and we'll be running another tutorial just to look at how that mapping will take place. Another thing yes, do we have a timeline? Of course, yes. So the timeline is based on what's in the brief. We are quite mindful that the situation with COVID is emerging. Also, to be fair, the response we have got for the competition is tremendous. So the amount of time we are taking to actually make sure the mapping is organized for you all is taking a little bit longer. So we might push the phase 1 by a week or 2. We still need to make an assessment of that. But at least we can promise that we'll give you the map tiles by Monday, based on the competency of how well most of the teams are able to map things out. We will then set the deadlines accordingly. But we are looking to keep the timelines a bit more flexible based on how things evolve on ground, but pretty much in line with what's given in the brief. Nothing too drastic in terms of change. What are the different methods of collecting data and how should we approach people? Okay, we're quite aware this is a COVID situation. There will be cities under lockdown in different phases. We do not expect you to go on any of the sites. We do not expect you to go and meet any people through this competition for this year. The expectation is only to be drawing up data through the QGIS platform for the patch that we will give you. The expectation is that you'll probably know more about the cities you'll belong to than any other person we would have given this exercise to. Hence, your understanding of the city would definitely get built into it in terms of categorizing those open spaces. Can we know the list of tools such as GIS and so on needed for the process? So we are only focusing on QGIS simply because it's open source, it's free, it's easy to use. Our team also looks at this as a capacity building exercise because no one actually sits down with you and actually teaches QGIS or the software. It's something which students proactively take on board as you move through the course as well. So we feel by giving you some sort of guidelines and giving a common platform, a open source free platform software to use would help to make the data much more streamlined as well connected. So we're not intending for you to use anything else other than QGIS for now. Do we have any other questions, Abrish? Okay. I wanted to know if we will be given sites or we choose one, or does it have to be the one we belong from? Now, this is a very good question. So as I said, you will be divided into groups. Each of you all will get a map tile of 7.5 kilometers by 7.5 kilometers. You will be responsible to, as a team, to draw up data within that. However, when you give that data back to us, we will stitch it together with all the other teams for your city. We'll run the analytics on a city by city basis. We will then provide you the analytics for your full city. Within that, then you can choose which site you want. What this means is that drawing up the data for your patch is your responsibility, yes, but it's also making sure you'll work within the groups within your city much more effectively. By this, we mean that if one team is struggling to draw up things or they're less competent in the technical aspects of QGIS and another neighboring team is able to do that, we would then pair you up or point you to encourage you all to work together, even if you all belong to different colleges. The idea is that we make sure that the data that comes out for your city comes out in the most holistic way as possible. So you all have to work within your teams across different colleges to make sure you all pull each other up, support each other up, so that you get the most holistic data as possible. Any other questions?
Okay.
Sabrish? Can you be more specific, please, regarding what? Okay, what sort of data collection will be doing for open spaces? Again, I'll reiterate this question unless I feel it's already answered. We will only be collecting through the QGIS software. The idea is to just draw up the spatial layers and categorize them based on the categories we will set for you. One of the things we are also going to get you to do is just draw out the outlines of the extent of tree cover, for example. So all these specific things will be really set out very clearly for you. Again, reiterating, we're not expecting you to go out and talk to people. We're not expecting you to go and visit those open spaces because with the COVID situation, we don't know how things will be on ground.
Darshana,
which college am I from?
Some sort of, okay, someone is.
Sabrish, maybe this is a question for you.
I'm not a part of college anymore, so I don't know if I'm supposed to say that I'm from a college.
Okay. Is the crowdsourced data to be presented as a particular format? Right. So when you all actually draw up things on QGIS, there will be a pre-prescribed format, which is shape files. We will set it out quite clearly for you as how you need to submit that. In an ideal situation, we would be requesting you to submit your QGIS files as the raw data itself.
Darshana, I think there are going to be some repetitive questions, so I'm just going to skip them if there is some sort of a repetitive question.
How many people will be there per team? I think this was made quite clear in the brief. At the moment, each tile that will be given to you, you all will work within your team for that based on the registered teams you all have provided us. If there is one, if there are teams which have only one individual, and if you still want to include up to 4 team members, you're free to do so. So please let us know if you're looking to expand your team to boost the capacity within your team. When will be the tutorials out for the software? So we've already set out one tutorial for you as a step-by-step guide. We sent you a pre-recorded video. For the next section, we'll also have a live session on drawing up your crowdsourced data on QGIS. So that will come forward next week. City path selected will be on what basis and criteria?
I think this is answered as well.
Yeah.
So,
since this is clearly more about crowdsourcing data, how much of the work will include work for designing, right? So the phase 1, which is the crowdsourcing data phase, is quite a short phase in the whole competition. Okay, so it's only going to be maximum 5 to 6 weeks. Anything after that is your design process. Anything after that is your research process, and that goes up to December. So you've got plenty of time to design. But the main thing is we are not going to encourage you to design now. We'd want you to focus more on the data crowdsourcing part of it. We were asked to group initially when we were applying for DesTech. What will happen to those teams? Those teams still remain. They're pretty much valid. You will, as I said, will be provided one tile for each within one city. But the expectation is you will have to work closely with all the teams in the city groups to make sure you all push each other to peer review each other and make sure the data that you collate for the city is much more holistic. Analyze it further. In order to analyze data, you need raw data, which Google is not going to give us. So we are going to work together to crowdsource it. So this is exactly what we're trying to do. Of course, OpenStreetMaps has data as well, but it's not complete at all, and hence we can't rely on it.
Sure.
Yeah, we can end the session, yes. The QGIS file will receive, yeah. I think what we'll do is, if there are any other questions left, we'll collect that on the forum and we'll put the answers to that, if that's okay.
Yeah, that sounds good, Roshni, because there'll be a lot of repetition again, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Final words from you, Sabrish. I'm going to sort of.
All right. And so it's just the same thing again. Of course, there might be a lot of insistence and hesitation about why do we have to look at data? You know, why don't we get started with design? Of course, we have some of the best solutions with us, and why don't we get started? But the objective here is that to try and look at something little more than what one can be perceived with the intelligence of just trying to do with design, but also at the same time to try and make this design as holistic as it can be. And I think in the sessions to come through, you'll have a brief outlook into how these softwares kind of help you. And yes, I think I had the same set of convictions when I initially started. I thought, no, I can do the same thing in AutoCAD. What am I going to learn out of QGIS? But yes, there are several aspects of QGIS which you will learn to appreciate, and they can. It's a very good way of engaging with the competition. You try and build a new skill that will help you to get and unravel new different areas which you might not have uncovered till date. So it's more or less like as a stepping stone. I wish you all good luck and hope to see you guys do well. That's.
Thank you ever so much, Sabrish, and thank you all for participating.